Now, what does demonetization really mean to the common man of the country? To deconstruct this word, demonetization, we're joined by a special guest today. But before that, you must know that there is panic, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's confusion, a few feelings a common man is currently going through on the back of PM Modi's surgical strike on this fake currency. This currency conundrum has raised eyebrows across the board. India is now in the global spotlight as the country fights corruption and black money. Some Indians support it with open arms, and there are some that are just tired of how there is just not enough being done to ease the pressure on the common man who's tired of standing in endless queues to access his own hard-earned money. Is this all just temporary now? Will this be good in the long run? How does demonetization really impact you and me? Will we see signs of deflation going forward? Maybe signs of some sort of a recession setting in? How does this temporary inconvenience benefit each of us in the long run? So many questions come up. To discuss this and more, we have with us Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, the partner at KPMG. Jaijit, let's start off now with the basic question. Do you view this as a bold step by the BJP government, who has not cared about the move being populist? They have not cared about the vote bank and just gone ahead and announced the surgical strike on black money. How do you see there being some sort of light at the end of the tunnel? Let's break this down.
Let's take the first point, that is it a bold step? Clearly, it consumes a significant amount of political capital. A country as big as India and as complex as India, 1.2 billion people will interpret demonetization in myriad different ways. They will interpret it in 1.2 billion ways and therefore react in multiple ways. Managing the change and managing its political repercussions is indeed a non-trivial issue to look at, and clearly spending that kind of political capital is quite a bold move. Having said that, where is the end of the tunnel for this particular case? What we believe, as per what the government has publicly declared, is that the banks will start getting the rupee 500 notes and the rupee 1000 notes, which is going to reduce the pressure on the supply chain for cash. And in turn, it's also going to help people get back to their normal lives, which existed about 8 days back before the demonetization move happened. And therefore, it should probably be a matter of another 7-8 days before we start limping back into normalcy. Having said that, it will also involve a recalibration of the ATM machines, because they now need to start disbursing the new kinds of 1000 rupee notes and 5000 and 500 rupee notes. And for that, the machines needs to sense the weight of the notes in a very different way, and therefore they need to be recalibrated. Recalibrating about 2 lakh plus ATMs is again not a mean task, and it will take a few weeks to get that done. So possibly the ATMs will take more time to come back into normalcy, but the usual banking operations will be back on track, and people will start getting the 500 rupee notes and the 2000 rupee notes soon, and subsequently perhaps a few months later they should start getting the 1000 rupee notes also.
But Dr. Bhattacharya, isn't it very easy for us to sit in the comforts of the environment that we are in terms of affluence, in terms of having access to plastic money, in terms of having e-wallets at our disposal, having smartphones? We are not feeling the pinch as much as the common man right there is feeling. Now, I understand that the government, for them, the secrecy as far as this move was concerned was absolutely imperative. And of course, the rejoinders to this that follow is the inconvenience bit, of course, were unavoidable. Now, how long do you think is the common man likely to get impacted by this? I mean, you saw the story that Shailja just filed right now. She went to the market and people are really being inconvenienced.
Yeah, no, it's a very pertinent point. The impact of any change is most felt by the people on the streets, the poorest of the poor. And clearly, if they don't have access to cash, they will not be able to sustain themselves for too long. The other impact also is that they are also not getting paid because there isn't enough cash in the market to pay them. So the daily laborers are getting impacted. Those who depend on daily wages, they are getting impacted. And those who had savings in 500 rupee notes and 1000 rupee notes and do not have significant savings, these may be maybe a net of 2 to 3,000 rupees, save for the rainy day, and this is the rainy day, they're not able to convert it given the circumstances that we are in. So clearly people on the streets are getting impacted. And we would have hoped that this should not have lasted for more than 3 to 4 days. Unfortunately, today is the 8th day and we are still in a similar situation. So I would tend to agree with you that this is a situation that's impacting the common man quite severely. And by common man, I mean really the poorest of the poor and not the middle class. I hope that the situation starts getting resolved in the next 1 to 2 days, at least for the people in the streets. In terms of reports we're getting from banks such as the State Bank of India, we hear that the pressure on the banks have reduced by 50%, which in a way implies that the immediate urgency of cash being required by the poorest of the poor has been taken care of to an extent. But this is for areas which are getting monitored. There are also people who are living way off from the banks in the hilly areas, in the remote areas, and it'll take them a couple of days to come down to a bank, exchange the money, and a couple of days to go back to wherever they live. And all of these people will obviously get impacted.
No,
the hope is that this is one time and this goes and leads to significant benefit for us.
A very interesting point you brought up about people who do not have access to ATMs because they're living in hilly terrains or they're living away from ATMs or they're just in a village where an ATM does not even exist. We're going to keep a close eye on how and what the government is really doing to make sure that every citizen of this country gets what he deserves, which is his hard-earned money. Now, India is a cash-based economy, Dr. Bhattacharya. The circulation of the counterfeit currency had caught on in a large way in India, giving rise to a whole host of macroeconomic problems, apart from just terrorism and corruption. Let us understand from you, why is the scheme really introduced and how does this impact each one of us in a longer term, not just the short-term impediments that we're facing?
Let me break down your question again in two parts. One is why it was introduced and second is impact.
Right.
To look at why it was introduced, let's look at the whole issue of black money because the first target was black money. Now, black money really constitutes assets which do not have a clear value, for example, real estate, and so you can pass it off as a higher value or lower value. And so typically you would buy real estate at a lower official value and then top it up with cash. You would buy gold because that's a wealth that you can carry anywhere in the world, and so there is a risk protection to it. And the third place that you would park your black money is assets which are overseas. But the fourth place to park your money is essentially cash itself. And we have seen stories after stories, which are all anecdotal in that sense, where we have seen hundreds of crores being unearthed either under the mattress or in the cupboards and so on and so forth. If you go by the anecdotal examples, then clearly there is still a significant amount of black money being saved in hard cash. The second part where cash comes into play in terms of black money is when transactions happen. So people don't pay black money in gold or in real estate, they convert that into cash and then that payment is done. And clearly, therefore, if you're able to put a stoppage on these two kinds of transactions, there will be a significant blow to black money. If you look at the cash hoards, they're typically again kept in 1000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes. Nobody would really keep large amounts of black money in 100 rupee or 50 rupee notes. And if that be the case, then demonetizing the 1000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes would clearly impact the hoarding of cash as black money. If you look at the statistics, 80% of the 14.6 trillion rupees that's floating as cash in the economy, 85% of it is 1000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes. And therefore, there is significant basis to say that if we demonetize 1000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes, will-nitly it will go and impact those cash reserves or those black money which has been held in cash. It's also going to impact future transactions that are done in cash, because there will be fear of dealing in cash, because at any point in time monetization can happen again. So there is a disincentive in handling cash. Having said that, demonetization is only handling one kind of assets, of black money assets, which is cash. The other black money assets, which is gold and overseas assets and real estates, are still untouched as of now. But clearly, as and when these assets are used for any transaction, they will get converted into cash, and that's when they will get caught up in the transform systems that we'll be having, wherein most of the transactions will get captured through a banking system and therefore will come up in the purview of the government systems. So that's one big reason why we are having demonetization. The second reason that has been given by the government is the fact that a lot of terror is being funded by black money. If we go by the media reports in the last couple of days, it appears that stone pelting in Jammu and Kashmir has come to almost zero. So there clearly seems to be some kind of a correlation between availability of large denomination cash and activities such as stone pelting and other such activities.
That's a fantastic
so clearly,
point, yes.
There is a better law and order because of black money being curbed and demonetization.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the sudden cut in the cash circulating in the market and the multiplier effect it has on the economy. We understand that that will shrink the GDP in the short term as well. Do you think that in the long run, this kind of a formal transactions that are being made will be made more inclusive and eventually give some sort of a fillip to the economy, benefiting each and every one of us?
Clearly in the short run, there will be less money available. And let's keep in mind that black economy and white economy are not divorced of each other, they feed into each other. So the white money, the white economy is getting fed by the black economy, and the black economy extracts itself out of the white economy. So it's a very clear connection between the two. Now, if you're reducing the availability of black money, then clearly sale of certain things such as luxury products, probably eating out, dining out, and so on and so forth will get impacted, which in turn means that there will be an impact on the white economy, on the sales that are being recorded by the large companies and corporations, and therefore there will be a deflationary impact that will happen on the economy itself. Having said that, we should also keep in mind that this was a good timing in the sense that after 2 years of rain deficit, we finally had good monsoons, which means that agricultural output has been quite satisfactory this year, which also means that the rural demand has been picking up. So the rural demand will actually possibly to some extent compensate for the loss of demand coming because of the curtailment of black money. In the long run, what that implies essentially is that cost of many things will come down, and therefore people would actually like to buy more eventually, because the money going into the banks will go up, which implies that they will be able to lend money at a lower cost, which means that there will be more investments coming in, which means that there will be more jobs getting created, and if there are more jobs getting created, there will be more money in the hands of people, and therefore they will start buying more. So essentially, if you see that because of the cleaning up of the economy, there is more formalization of the economy, which essentially means that more jobs gets created. In the past, in the absence of this formalization, and about 30% of the economy estimated to be in the black, that money was not being proactively used. The other severe implication was that the government was not able to get sufficient taxes, and very few people were paying the taxes. And therefore the black money was not contributing to the tax kitty, which essentially meant that the government would go ahead and borrow money from the market. By the government borrowing money from the market, the cost of money for everybody else was going up. Also, it had an inflationary impact, which means that all of us paid for that inflation. If you used to, if you could buy food for 10 rupees, because of the government borrowing, willy-nilly we will end up buying food at 11 rupees. So that was a loss that was happening for everybody, even the poorest of the poor. With the black money going out of the system, the loss for the poorest of the poor because of the inflationary cost comes down significantly. And that's the theory behind what the long-term benefits of this step would be.
You know, Dr. Bhattacharya, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because amidst this backslash at the BJP government, amidst people cribbing about the fact that there is just so much inconvenience being caused to them, what people probably are failing to realize is that all of us paid for the black money that really existed in the market, like you rightly pointed out, with the manner in which the inflation went up as well. Now, just to break it down to our viewers, now in theory, when more money circulates in the economy, the price of everything you consume goes up as the value of the money decreases, and vice versa as well. So now, with the shrinking supply of currency, the price of the necessities should drop. Having said that, with more bank deposits, bank would gravitate to lend at lower rates as well, spurring the white cash back into the economy and spur inflation again. Now, this is just in theory. Dr. Bhattacharya, you did mention we will see some sort of deflationary signs in the economy as well. Now, the question really is this deflation going to be short-term, or is this deflation going to be long-term, or do you think in the macro aspect, the economy really remains unaffected? But I believe you did mention that this deflationary pressure will set in, which is a good news for the economy. Walk us through this a little more in detail.
Sure, you're absolutely right. In the short term, this will be deflationary because the demand goes out. As I said, the black money was also feeding into the white economy. And so those for whom the black money has got liquidated, they will have that much less demands for goods and services. And so clearly it will be deflationary. The second immediate impact for the next couple of weeks is that even white money is not available because of the demonetization. And therefore there is a double whammy going on in the very, very short term. But in the next 3 to 4 months, as this whole cash supply chain gets sorted out in the next 1 or 2 weeks, in the next 3 to 4 months, the impact will be more in terms of the demand still being low because black money not being available. Having said that, as I said, the compensatory impact as of now also is the fact that rural demand will be going up thanks to a good monsoon that we had. But besides that, in terms of just the inflationary or deflationary impact of demonetization, the money was going back into the bank, as rightly pointed out. And once the bank is sucking up all the cash, its assets go up, and as per demand and supply, the interest rate that they will be offering for such money will go down. And as it goes down, it will be cheaper to borrow money. If it's cheaper to borrow money, it stands to reason that investors will be borrowing this money and will hopefully be using it for productive assets being created. To man those productive assets, you would need labor, you would need to give employment to people, and therefore more people will get jobs and more people will get money in their hand, which means that they will end up spending that money to buy more goods and services.
Absolutely.
So essentially the total number of transactions in the economy goes up significantly, and that implies that there will be a very positive feedback into the economy.
Interesting to note that we will see signs of deflation, and overall health of the economy stands to gain from this move. Now, what is the impact that would be seeing in the SMEs, which is the small and medium enterprises as well, and a lot of the unorganized economy more importantly? Now, the people working in these sectors, these people are going to be losing jobs. So this kind of fragmented, unorganized sector, and how does that really get impacted? Because a large part of our country is very fragmented in terms of the cottage industries and the SMEs as well. And this probably could also have a recessionary impact, so as to speak.
So being fragmented is not necessarily a bad thing. Being fragmented is not a bad thing. It depends on the industry that you're operating in. If the industry demands economy of scale, then being fragmented is bad because your cost base goes up. Having said that, the assumption that demonetization would lead to a negative impact on the SMEs is probably not a correct assumption. I would wonder why the SMEs would go belly up with demonetization. There is a short-term effect which will exist for the next 2 to 3 weeks, maybe end of November. But post that, it's the same set of currencies that will be there in the market, and therefore the 500 rupee notes or 2000 rupee notes, and eventually the 1000 rupee notes will be back. But what will happen is in this process, there will be a transformation in the economy where people will start moving towards a formal channel of payments and a digital channel of payments. In fact, even the habit of giving a payment in check, we have heard from your TV channels that people are accepting checks even in shops, in some of the not so upmarket shops in Delhi. And that clearly has a very positive impact. See that in the light of also GST coming in. In fact, the SMEs will get impacted more with GST than with demonetization, because with GST, if they are not registered, then they cannot be part of the supply chain of large companies, because otherwise the large companies would end up losing the setback that they will get from the GST. So if you look at the entire set of gamut of issues which are hitting SMEs, demonetization is perhaps the least of the issues. The larger issue will be globalization, which will demand a certain economy of scale, GST, which will demand that they are part of of the GST chain, which means that they need to enable a significant amount of IT into their operations, which will be a very difficult thing for many of the SMEs.
Sure.
And those are going to impact SMEs more than just the demonetization.
All right. That's unfortunately, Dr. Bhattacharya, that's all the time that we have on this edition. But, we will continue tracking the demonetization's impact on the micro and the macro economy in much detail. And as Dr. Bhattacharya rightly pointed out, we will see sanitization and hygiene restored in the long run. And India is, of course, headed to a digital economy. With that, it's a wrap. I will see you tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m.